When I first started this podcast, it happened in part because I myself listen to a lot of podcasts. And I was tired of always hearing the hindsight is 2020 stories that can be told only from the people who had already reached a certain level of success. Now, of course, those stories are still important, allowing us all to see how the dots are connected and that things do work out in the long run. We still have those conversations on this podcast too. But I've always been curious in equally hearing from the makers who are right in the thick of it. The ones figuring it out as they go, making decisions in real time without the luxury of knowing how everything is going to turn out. For example, what does it look like to fall in love with clay as an adult when you already have a deeply meaningful and demanding career? How do you navigate being equally passionate about your day job and your creative practice, with no desire to choose between them? Today's conversation with Melisa of MWY Pottery explores all of this beautifully. By training, Melisa is a lung cancer doctor and researcher who started clay just 2 years ago. In that short time, she's built what she calls a side saunter, her brilliant alternative to the hustle mentality. And that allows clay to remain a wonderful gift to herself, as opposed to a stressful side hustle, but also maintains a level of professionalism and intentionality past being a simple hobby. Long story short, while Melisa has no plans to ever leave her important medical research career, for which we are grateful, she also still takes her newfound passion for clay very seriously. As serious as submitting and being accepted into galleries. We'll dig into how she's navigated everything from switching community studios to working at home, to finding the resources and support of fellow makers online, and ultimately to using her art as resistance and connection during challenging times. Whether you're a full-time maker or someone who never plans to make clay your full-time gig, this conversation reminds us all that success as a maker is uniquely defined by each and every one of us. So let's dive into this conversation about finding your own pace, connecting your personal and professional worlds, and defining success on your own terms, right after this brief word from our sponsor. This episode is sponsored by The Community, your creative business support system with over 100 makers from around the world, with both the practical education you need to make a living from the things you make, found in our masterclasses on topics like finances, marketing, and SEO, plus the emotional support of fellow makers who truly understand what it's like to try and make a living from the things we make. It's like having both a business school designed specifically for artists and a team of colleagues who actually get what you're going through. But you don't have to take my word for it.
Hi, I'm Alicia Hagan in New Mexico. I joined the community last year after leaving my teaching career to pursue becoming a full-time artist. The community has been so invaluable in my growth as a solo artist because I still feel like I have coworkers and people I can talk to about my struggles and successes. The quarterly masterclasses always teach me something I didn't know I was even supposed to know. I also absolutely love going to the live co-working sessions and the book club meetups where I can hang out in real time with other makers from all around the world. It is awesome. You can find me and follow my journey on Instagram at Alicia Hagan Art.
As Alicia mentioned, feel free to reach out to her if you have any questions or check out makersplaybook.com/community to learn more and come join us. Now, on with the show. Welcome to the Maker's Playbook, the show where we talk all about what it's really like to make a living from the things you make. I'm your host, seasoned entrepreneur of 14 years, Rebecca Ikes Cara. Hey, Melisa, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much, Rebecca. Super happy to be here.
We just got so official. I sat up a little straighter. I feel like nobody can see us, but I just told them. Before I get carried away, I'm going to let you go ahead and introduce yourself. So take it away.
Hi, everyone. I am Melissa of MWY Pottery. I am a tiny batch ceramic artist and I exclusively hand build. And this year I've been making a lot of resistance art. I consider myself a side saunterer, and I'm sure we'll talk about what I mean by that. But my full time job is as a lung cancer doctor and cancer researcher, where I focus on improving care for older adults with cancer to help them optimize their quality of life.
I love that. I love that so much. And I'm going to immediately start talking about side sauntering because I also love that phrase. And as anybody who's listened to the podcast, even, well, maybe not recent, but for a period of time, everybody should know what I'm excited about is sharing stories at all different stages of making experience, of business, of side sauntering. And so we were chatting a bit also about like how new you are pretty new to clay and yet like just off to the races. It's kind of ridiculous.
Yeah, I started clay. I took my first throwing class in July 2023 as a 40th birthday present to myself. I'd never really done clay before, except maybe I remember making a dinosaur like pinch thing in elementary school and maybe a whistle in some summer camp, but that was about it. So that was really my first time taking a throwing class. I didn't love it. I almost stopped at the end of that 8 week class because I wasn't that good at it. I was like, okay. But it was fun. And my husband had encouraged me to take the class just to get out of the house in the evening because my son he's now 5, but he's very attached to me. So I can't go anywhere in my house by myself. Like my son is like right there. Whereas I tell my husband that he's like free to move about the cabin and I cannot. So it was very much encouraged, like, go do something for yourself. So I was like, okay, let's do that. And then at the end of the 8 weeks, I was like, okay, I don't love it. I don't think I'm going to continue. It's kind of expensive and I'm super frugal, as you know. And then he was like, you should just like do more, like try something different. So then I tried the hand building class, and that's really what I enjoyed much more.
It's really interesting to think about, and we don't have to go too deep down the psychology, but I feel like you are very good at reflecting how many of us, when we first start, like, definitely wheel throwing has a big barrier to entry on the front end of it. You know, it
Mhm.
takes so much longer to feel like you've gotten anything out of it. And not saying hand building doesn't. Don't come at me, Leela. I can already hear you. Like, I know there's plenty of skill involved. But it's just, I can't help but think about like what brain space all of us have gotten into that when we're going to try and find like a hobby or something fun to do or something to relax, that like we still have to be good at it. And it just, you just describing that just made me think of that. This doesn't actually have a question at the end, but feel free to pare back any other reflection. I don't know.
Yeah, I think, like I am a high achiever. Many of us are, and we are just used to doing things that we enjoy and are good at. I think but even if I stuck at wheel throwing, I don't think I would have been that good at it. I tried like a one-time session, like much later on, and I was still not very good at it, even though I've been immersed in clay a lot more now. I just like hand building a lot more. You have a lot more control. One of my good friends, after I told him that I enjoy hand building so much more than wheel throwing, he was like, obviously, Melissa, like I could have told you that. I was like, why didn't you tell me? I didn't know that there's like different personalities who might like one or the other, but hand building is just much more controlled for me. So I kind of am like, why would I get the clay all wet and like smush it around when I could just like roll a slab and like make the same cylinder? But it's so much slower. I think I'm the world's slowest hand builder, which is not helpful for economies of scale when you're trying to sell what you're making. But it does fit me a lot more.
I also love that our brains are so similar because you're like, you're side sauntering, but you're also talking about economies of scale.
Yes.
And I'm like, that is not a saunter, Melissa.
It is a saunter to me because it's at my pace with what I want to do. I have no schedule. People are always talking about, be consistent, post, on a regular schedule. I have no schedule except for my Monday story for Score and Slip, which we'll talk about later. But I really just do what I want to do when I want to do it, however I want to do it. And I really try to not increase stress in my life because as a lung cancer doctor, there's a lot of stress in my life already. Things are very serious, things are very high stakes. And so I don't want pottery to add to that potential overwhelm. And so I just really try to stay really conscious about like, how am I feeling with this? Is it feeling like too much? So if I do pre-orders and there's too many pre-orders, then I'll just like slow things down. And I've made my turnaround time 3 months, even though I don't need 3 months, but I just do that so that there's no stress on kind of getting things out the door at a certain time.
I love that because I think the really interesting balance I've seen you strike, and I should explain, like, you are a member of the community, so, like, I know a little bit more about what's going on with MWY Pottery than typical interview, perhaps. But I think the really delicate balance I've seen you be able to strike is, like, you take it very seriously. You wanna do things in a I don't wanna say official way because that's a weird adjective, but you wanna learn an efficient way to do things, if there is a proper, quote, unquote, "way to do things." You wanna present things in a professional manner. You've done some gallery submissions and all sorts of stuff. You're taking it very professionally, and at the same time keeping this balance of, like, this you're not trying to make this your full-time job. You have an
No.
incredibly meaningful, fulfilling, busy full-time job.
Yes.
And I think that's a really tricky balance to strike because I think either people are pure hobby to where it's like, I'm not going to worry about a website. I'm not going to worry about an email list. I'm not going to worry about any of this other stuff. I'm just going to make what I like to make and have a very large closet. Or it's like, I'm setting up all this stuff because one day I want to quit. And you're not in either of those spaces.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, I approach it professionally because that's just me. Like I'm just essentially the way I approach pottery is just like take normal, professional, everyday Melissa pre-pottery and just like throw in clay and everything is exactly the same. So tend to be very organized. I tend to know what I want to do. I tend to make decisions very decisively. I tend to be pretty quick with things like in my regular research job. I'll do things quickly or I'll know exactly kind of how I want to shape something, so I have that vision and it's very clear to me. And then in pottery I'm just kind of doing that same thing, but I'm also not brand new to selling crafts. So I used to sell wire art on Etsy before Etsy was like even popular way back in like 2010. And so I've done that before. It was very casual back then. I had orders kind of come in random times. And it was before you could like pre-order UPS or USPS to come to your house and pick things up. Like I used to have to drive things to the post office, and that was actually like the most annoying part of the whole thing because I didn't have time to drive to the post office. I was in med school, I was an intern, like I was a resident. I didn't have time for any of that. So, but it was fun. Like, some of my orders were like make name tags for weddings or make the menu holder for weddings, or I did like a wholesale of little plant markers for a little online shop. So that was fun, but I kind of stopped when my day job got too busy and it wasn't that interesting. So I had some of those base skills already and kind of that interest in entrepreneurship. Like I used to sell origami when I was little. I've always done crafts, even though I came to pottery very late. So I don't think I was starting like as a fresh crafter or a fresh artist. I was kind of bringing along a lot of those skills and kind of experiences. And then in research, you're also essentially running a small business. You have your research assistants. You are responsible for finding all of your funding. So we talk about hard money versus soft money in academia. And most research positions are soft money where you have to bring in grants to pay yourself and your team. You don't just get a job and you get to use, like your regular salary to do the research. You actually have to go out and get the funding, which is all sorts of more difficult right now. But all of that kind of brings in skills that you wouldn't think would be related to selling your pottery, but it actually very much is.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, realizing that, because I think I just unknowingly assumed that there's a lot of organizations that, like, they have grant writers. That's a skill set unto itself. So therefore, like, yes, you're still beholden to the grant, but you don't have to apply for it. And so hearing you say that, I'm like,
No, I
wait,
write the
you're getting
grant.
like the worst of all things put together. You are beholden to an employer who also has to approve like PTO and paid vacation and all of this stuff, like set vacation days. And also you have to fund yourself. Like, wait a second.
Yeah, I remember when I was a fellow in my medical oncology fellowship and learning from an attending that you actually have to figure out your salary every year because that was completely like new and surprising to me. I would say the benefits of research instead of being a full-time clinician is that when you're being a clinician, you often find things that are difficult or challenging or annoy you in clinic. Like you don't understand why we don't have data on this patient population, like older adults, which is where I focus. And so, in order to fill those gaps, you have to go out and do the research. Otherwise, you're kind of relying on other people to care about the same things you do. And so, it really does give you a way to improve the care you're providing in clinic because a lot of the research questions I focus on come from direct patient care. But it also gives you a lot of flexibility. So if I was a full-time clinician, I would be in clinic, Monday through Friday, from whatever time it starts to late at night, writing notes in the evenings and things like that. And so it just helps me break up my work week and my schedule and kind of my priorities so that I do have, one day of clinic on Mondays where I am seeing patients in clinic in person. And then the rest of the time is research where I'm either working on writing grants, writing papers, conducting the research, doing analyses. So there are a lot of different roles, kind of like in pottery. You might be building one day, you might be glazing or trimming. I don't trim. People trim, I've heard. Or like packaging another day. So there's a lot of different activities involved, and you get to sprinkle it in kind of however order and which way you want to do it. So it is a lot more flexible, but it does have the major downside of having to fund yourself.
Yeah. Yeah. But all of that then does make so much sense in terms of the way you've been approaching this, because I do see you like being very research oriented and like, well, let me learn about this subject first and then I'm going to make the best decision for myself. And having this confidence that I don't see that many people have in like making the best decision for yourself, regardless of the internet noise of like, well, I should be doing this or I should be doing that. I mean, the
Yeah.
first thing that ever went viral for you was literally like, I don't do any of the shoulds.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. And that was a random reel, I made, I think, on like a Friday evening after my son went to bed. I was like, I don't throw. I don't pull my own handles. I don't use porcelain. I might use porcelain someday, so I might update the reel. I don't make my own glazes. People really come at me for these things. I'm like, I don't have time to make my own glazes. Like I've got people to take care of in my job. I've got things to do. So my priorities are just different. And I would say that's a very me thing. Like I don't have a people pleasing bone in my body. I know a lot of people struggle with that. Like I do not. So I'm very used to making decisions that work for me, like regardless of what other people think. I'll of course take into account their perspective, different guidance or different advice from people, but I have a long history of doing what I think I should do and not necessarily what someone thinks or what someone tells me I should do.
I'm going to make an official request that since we just started the skill swaps classes in the community, which for anybody who's not in there, our community members are sharing like their skills out. They can be in clay, but also outside of clay because we have plenty of people who have other jobs. And so Debbie just shared her her knowledge as an art director around file formatting and image sizes and all of this type of stuff that you need for submissions for art shows. But I'm like rambling on here to get to the point of explaining my formal request for you to teach a non-people pleasing skills because I need that personally.
Yeah, I don't know if you've ever heard of Gretchen Rubin's like four tendencies. I am a
Mhm,
questioner. And when
mhm.
I did that little quiz and found out that I'm a questioner, I was like, oh, that makes so much sense because I will question everything. I don't just follow guidelines because someone told me to. I need to understand why, and then I need to agree with it. If I don't agree with it, I may not do it unless it's like a legally requirement, which I will do very begrudgingly. So I don't know how much of it can be taught. I do think you can move the needle on it because I used to be a coach for women of color in academic medicine with a coaching program that I was a client of as well. And so it really does help you move in a different way in the world. And for us, it was in academics and research when you're surrounded by other people who are also doing the same thing. So we talked about it as a lot of like stepping out, borrowing courage from other people. So when you see other people do things in non-traditional, non-typical ways, then you feel more empowered to do that. And so that experience with getting coached and being a coach, I think really helped me break out and kind of follow my own path in academia. And I think that just carries through in everything I do.
I think you just summed up exactly why I find the community so important.
Mhm.
Because it's like when you see other people figuring this out, because I think for most of us as makers, we are not the norm, right? And so it can feel really disheartening, lonely, add whatever negative emotion when like you can have great, wonderful friendships in real life, but if none of them are artists or makers, there's just something that they don't get about what you're trying to do. Even as a professional, even as a side saunterer who, like, this is the secondary thing, I think there's probably people who are like, "Wait, you're the rare free time you've had, you've filled up with this side business that," it's like, "Well, yeah, because we can't I can't even put into words why we do what we do, but, like, we all get it. Like, I don't have to explain it to
Yeah.
anybody listening because that's why they're listening."
Yeah, and I would say that doing the pottery and making the art is what helps me keep going in the day job. Because the day job is rough. Like, there are days when I will give a cancer diagnosis or tell patients that, their cancer is too advanced and it's not curable. Like, I need to go home and just like smooth clay after that. And it really does help. So, and I don't even fill up all my free time. If I'm feeling tired, if I'm not in the mood, like, I just won't do it either. So I just really don't have expectations or the stress of like, I need to meet this goal. Like, I don't actually set goals. And I know that that's like very like blasphemous to say, but I'm just here to like see where I'm going to bring this and just keep going and just like have fun with it and just see like what new opportunities and what new experiences I can kind of achieve with it.
I think that answers Bill's question that he submitted that I know you've already seen. I'm going to read it out loud anyways, and if there's something else you want to add to it, then go for it, because his immediate question was related to time management. Quote, "How do you get so much accomplished in what seems so little time? Considering all of your responsibilities, I'm amazed how much is done with pottery and how quickly you react and complete bigger tasks." Which I agree, because your execution time
Yeah.
between like idea to execution is basically 0 minutes from the outside looking in.
Yeah, I would say that that's relatively true. Like I wanted to create some courses because I was getting a lot of questions about my spiral mug. And like disclaimer, I did not create the spiral mug. It's a form that's existed long before me. I just like it because I like asymmetric organic forms and it means I don't have to pull a handle. It's very like easy to hand build it. But I was getting so many questions. So I thought, okay, well, the next time I make a mug, I'm just going to film it all. And so it was just me filming in the backyard. So there was better lighting and just talking through it and then learning how to use CapCut really quickly just to edit it, adding some subtitles, adding some like images at the beginning, a little table of contents. But once I had that first course made and had all of those templates and images, I could just make the next two courses really quickly. So I did. I think the first one was made maybe August of last year. And then by like October, I had like two more courses. And so, and I had only done clay for a year at that point. And so by traditional standards, like people would have told me, like, you have no business teaching anyone. You are a beginner. And technically, yes, I was still like kind of a beginner slash intermediate, but I still felt like I had something to share. People still enjoyed like doing the courses and making the different projects. And so that was just an example of where the first one actually makes the second and third very easy. So it was very quick to kind of just like roll them out. And then now I don't have to answer those questions. I could just be like, hey, I have a course. And then some people are like, but you have to pay for the course. I'm like, I know this is not a nonprofit. Like, I'm not just here to like educate you. Like, there are people who are out there educating people, but that's just not what I do.
Well, and you've actually shifted my perspective on this, right? Because I was one of those people initially, and you know this, that I was like, Melissa, hold on. Just hold on. Hold on. Like, it's really new. But there's two things that I think are great about the way you approached it. Number one, you didn't start telling everybody, hey, like, you weren't like, I know everything about clay. You can learn from me. You very specifically only taught these two objects, right? These two things you were really confident in that you had made a bunch of times already, that you knew what you were doing. You weren't like, I'm going to now go teach a beginning wheel throwing class,
No, no, I
right?
could not. Yeah.
I think the tendency on the internet is for all of us who want to help people to want to always give an answer instead of saying, like, this is what I know and this is what I don't. And so you did a really good job of, like, yes, maybe those courses were super early on in a career of clay, but at the same time they're very specific.
Mhm.
They're not like a broad, let me teach you how to be a hand builder, period. Because that's huge. That's a huge scope. And all of us are always still learning something. But like these were just like, I can teach you how to make this fruit flutter bowl that I have already made however many dozens, if not hundreds of times at this point,
Yeah. Yeah. And,
right?
even since then, like things have evolved. For the spiral mug, the thickness that I did in the video changed. And I think it's changed even again to be thinner and thinner over time. And so sometimes I think about re recording them, but I'm kind of just too busy for that right now. But I think that that's okay. Things don't have to be perfect to put it out in the world. And that's something I try to teach my son because he's 5 and he's like very much me in like a little kid body. Where if something is not perfect, he does like get mad at it. And I used to be like that a lot. And I still sometimes am, depending on the thing. But I really try to be okay, like putting out, like, it's not mediocre or like bad. It's just like, it's excellent. It's just not exceptional yet. And that's okay. And even my art back here literally says excellence, not perfection, because I need a reminder of that.
Yeah.
So I think it's okay to put things that are not perfect, things that others might criticize, because I kind of don't, I have like a, I don't give a fuck attitude for a lot of that. Sorry, you might have to make this explicit, and apologies to
You're
any
fine.
parents out there.
We'll give them warning.
Yeah.
It was also very small.
Yeah. Like, go ahead and criticize it, I'm still selling courses.
Well, and this wasn't the second thing. So this is 1.5. The price is very reasonable. You're not saying I'm an expert at clay, come learn from me. You're very transparent about that. And also, like, the second point I wanted to make was that normalizing learning from someone has a value to it. That it's, yes, I'm really glad we don't have the level of gatekeeping that we used to have before the internet and before YouTube. And that's super important. At the same time, for the people that are, so farther along in their careers and have invested, whether it be a traditional academic degree, whether it be like years of workshops and whatever to bring to something, putting together a course for yourself took time,
Mhm.
took effort, took knowledge, took the cost of the class you took on hand building, took all of these things. And so, I mean, for any of us to keep providing resources to people, it does have to be funded somehow, whether it be through a grant for teaching or whether it be through paying for a course. Like, we have to normalize that at some level because, just sitting here recording right now costs money.
Yes. Yeah. And I really don't like the idea of gatekeeping being synonymous with any time you don't share all your secrets with a random stranger who asks you on the internet. Because I don't think we don't owe people anything. It is not gatekeeping to not share all of my secrets. Like when I get asked glaze combos and they're in the course, I don't share it anymore. And I used to share it. I shared it with like hundreds of people who asked before I made the course. But that's not gatekeeping because you are free to go and figure out those combos yourself. You are free to scour the internet and learn those things yourself. I am not in any way restricting your ability to learn for yourself. And so that's just me having a boundary. And if you don't like that boundary, that's not my problem. And it's the same. And I think where that comes from is in academia, there is such a culture of exploiting people's time for free, asking us to do more service for free. Like the entire academic publishing infrastructure relies on academic researchers reviewing articles for free. We give our time, we do not get paid. The publishing companies make millions or billions, but that entire infrastructure relies on us feeling obligated to work for free. And so wherever it makes sense for me to not do things for free, I don't anymore. And I don't feel bad about it because
I love
I
that.
don't have that much time.
I think I need you as a coach for me.
Yeah,
actually.
I mean, we can talk about coaching in the community if that would be helpful.
Could be super fun.
Yeah.
That could be super fun. I do want to talk. We joked about this, but I think it would be pretty hilarious and also important because things ebb and flow and change. So talking about the community, you were like, Rebecca, I can talk about why I left and why I came back.
Yeah, no, I said I don't have to talk about it. Like, we can keep that a secret if you like. But you
No.
said no, let's talk about it.
Well, because I'm a big fan of I have never wanted to create a space that feels that you can't leave. I'm so reliant on this. Let me back up. I had a mentor once, and this is going to feel completely unrelated, but it will connect. when I started hiring staff, when I started having other photographers work for me and with me, there was a lot of people who made other photographers sign non-competes and
Mm,
NDAs,
mhm,
where it was like, if you were gonna work with me, you couldn't work with anybody else because basically the fear that you were gonna learn something from me and then go off and like steal clients or whatever. It was
mhm,
all fear-based. And so I asked my mentor, like, is that what you do with your team? Like, do they have to sign non-competes? And he very quickly was like, I just make it so enjoyable to
mhm,
work with us
mhm,
that they don't want to work for anybody else.
mhm.
And that really shifted something for me out of like this fear-based scarcity of like, I can't let somebody, if somebody goes somewhere else, we're going to lose everything, into just make it so good that you wouldn't want to, but like you can. But also at the same time, like getting more realistic from a pottery standpoint and a side sauntering standpoint, life ebbs and flows. Like, I don't want it to be something where it's like, oh, I'm locked into this, even though right now there's so much else going on with life that I'm, you know, not getting the value out of it or whatever. Like, no, leave, come back. Great. Like that's normal. That happens with friendships, right? Like I have
Yeah,
some friends I haven't texted in a month. I know I can call them tomorrow and everything
yeah,
will be fine.
yeah. Those are the best friends. I got a text from someone who was at ASCO the other day, and they're like, "Are you at ASCO this year?" I was like, "No, I'm not." But those are the best. And so I first joined the community when my reels, like my quote unquote viral reel, had maybe like 20,000 views, and to me that was big because at that point I maybe had 200 followers. Like I was like not doing the Instagram thing at all back then. And I joined because I was like, "Hey guys, I have a reel that's like getting a lot of views, but I have no idea what to do with it. And the mug's not actually selling yet. Like, how do I get someone to actually buy the mug and the reel?" And so I joined like with like very little knowledge at that point. And so I learned so much, like so quickly too. And then after a couple of months, I was like, okay, well, like I'm good for now. It was very casual. I was still like getting my feet wet. And so I thought like, okay, well, I don't need anything active right now. So then I stepped away. And during the months away was when I made the courses. But I still had all of the contacts, of the friendships that I've made in the community. So I could still ask people questions. And I still did. Like Bill is probably like Melissa asks me questions all the time. Even like when I was not in the community, and he was very gracious and like very helpful and answered them. And then when I switched from community studios to working at home in a home studio, which is just literally half my home office, then I was like, okay, well, I need community again. And so then that's when I joined for the year because who doesn't love a bargain? Um, like I was like,
You and
oh,
me
I get
both,
a few
girlfriend.
months free. Okay. So then I was like, well, I need the community because my goal in selling is not to make money. Like, yes, I have a profit motive. If the IRS is listening, I am a business, not a hobby. But my goal is to connect with people, to like have new experiences through pottery. And so it made sense to invest in the community for that piece because I'd like if I was just making at home by myself with like no interaction with other people, and like even if I was making like a ton of profit, like that actually isn't my goal because that doesn't sound very fun to me. So the community really provides a space to talk about pottery, to exchange ideas, like learn things. Like I watched Debbie's recording the other day and that was super fabulous. And so to me that's the goal of pottery. It's not to make money because I don't actually need to make money. I have a full-time job that provides a very like happy lifestyle for myself that I don't need more. So I use the pottery experience as a way to connect with people.
Hmm. I love that. I love that. It reminds me a little bit about what Francesco says in terms of, even though it is his career, he always talks about like production almost as a way of learning more about himself as a human.
Hmm.
And it's like, yes, this is my job, but it's my job to help me be a better human, not my identity, right? Which is
Yeah.
a big flip for me coming in like American culture in terms of like the first question we ask anybody when we meet them, their name and what do you do,
Hmm.
right? Like
Hmm.
it's tied into our identity so much where it's interesting for me, especially from a crafts person and making and something that we are all passionate about and is a full-time career, that it's still this separate thing that feeds growth as a human. But like, I'm like, good job me for marrying a well-balanced, fully formed human. I'm like, what a concept.
Well, I also think that that's like very difficult in academia also because most people are their career in academia, like
Mm.
their success is their academic success. And so it has taken a lot of like self-reflection and work to make my success as like a human, quote unquote, success, not tied to how many grants I have, how many papers I published. Like it is a job to me. And people will think of that as like, oh, she doesn't care enough about research or she doesn't care enough about being a physician. But it is a job to some people it is their calling, it is this beautiful thing that is their entire being, and that's not what I want it to be, because then you are reliant on your success to feel good about yourself. Your self-worth comes from your work, and for me that's like I've had to draw a line between like myself and what I do. Like I have value even if all my grants are getting rejected, which may happen this year because they're cutting the NIH
Spoiler.
budget. So it really is important to keep it separate for me and to define your success and like who you are as a human. And I love that Francesco thinks of it that way because I really do think pottery has helped me reflect a lot on like why I am the way I am. And even just thinking about this podcast and like what would I say, how would I describe things, like makes me really reflective of like why do I make these decisions that are different than other people, but I'm totally okay with it. Like that's like a me thing. It's not a pottery thing. So it really does help from that perspective as well.
You're both just such fully for like I'm like, when
Well,
did
you had to
everybody
go through a lot of trauma to get here.
I know, right? I know, right?
I didn't come out this way.
Let's talk more about side sauntering. And for people who are hearing me going like, what the heck are you talking about? This is Melissa's alternative to a side hustle.
Yes.
And I
Yeah.
love that distinction.
Well, because when I joined the community, you have to pick like what kind of potter are you? And I was like full-time and side hustler. And I was like, I don't want to hustle. Like I'm too tired to hustle. Like I've hustled so much in my day job that I do not want to hustle. Like I'm not looking for another full-time job. So I clicked side hustle like very begrudgingly. And then I was like, hi everyone, I'm a side saunterer because I'm just like going at a casual like pace. Like sometimes it is power walking because I am a fast walker, but sometimes it's, it's just like cruising. And so to me, it's just about doing the work that you want to do at the pace you want to do it without like being so beholden to like capitalism essentially.
That's actually a perfect segue because you also, I think the tendency for a lot of people doing a side saunter or we're going to stick with side saunter because even side hustle now implies different things to me, is to default to using a platform like Etsy, right? And I've actually been the one to recommend it to many people because it's like, well, they handle all the taxes, they handle the marketing, there's a platform already built in. So if you just want a place to land to sell your work online, that's an easy place to default. But then seeing the decisions you've made actually shifts that a little bit because the typical phrase would be a soft place to land. And Etsy is not a soft place to land. There's all the algorithm game you have to play if you do want to have sales on there. And a lot of that is in complete contrast to a saunter, right? Like speed of customer service responses, speed of shipping, yada, 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 yada. The list goes on. So you've been really intentional about not using Etsy as well.
Well, I actually did start on Etsy
Mm-hmm.
for my pottery, and that was because I had my old Etsy shop open. So I could just rename it. It made it sound like I was very established. It was like opened in 2010, even though it was a completely different business. But I was different than the typical beginner on Etsy because I brought all of my customers to Etsy. I think maybe I had like one or two sales to someone that I didn't know. But a lot of my sales came from a Facebook group of physician women artists, and they have been very supportive of my work. And so I didn't need Etsy to bring customers to me. So I didn't play that game. Like I never gave free shipping because I thought, well, either I'm paying the shipping or it's hidden and it's hidden in the cost or it's just a separate cost. And so in my mind, it was easier to understand the value of each piece if I kept shipping separate. So, and I was like, and I still was a quote unquote like star seller that didn't hurt it at all. My original plan was to switch to my own website when my Etsy fees exceeded the cost of the website domain or the platform for the year. But then I learned from Bill in the community that Square has a free tier, which most other website hosting services don't have a free tier anymore. They have like a free trial period and then you have to pay a basic tier. But Square still has a free tier. And let me know if you want a referral code because they do have them. Hit me up in my DMs on Instagram. And so I was like, wait a minute, this changes the calculus because I'm not paying for a website platform anymore. So then it was a very obvious change. And I think I made the website over like a few days over the holidays last Christmas because I just wanted it up and running. And so I use it essentially as like a checkout service because before then I was individually DMing people, kind of like being like, what's your address? Like, let me like estimate shipping and then let me, tell you the price and here's my Venmo. And that actually takes a lot of time because people do not check their phones. So I would be waiting on a shipping address from someone for a while. And I'm like, I would like to ship you your, the thing you bought. Like, what is your address? And so that just helps take away all of that extra work. And then you pay your credit card fees, which is a much lower percentage. But I don't have my own domain because then I would have to go to the paid tier. And to me, that's not worth it at this point because I don't need the like added professionalism points from having a, MWY pottery.com or something. So it's MWY pottery.square.site. And that's a little odd, yes, but it works. People find me, they check out through the website. So that's kind of how I made those decisions over time. But the community was like 100% responsible for me learning that that was even an option. And then to be able to talk to Bill and Jessica who use Square to learn how they use it.
Honestly, it's kind of reframed a lot of the things that I default to. Like when I start a business, I immediately buy a URL, throw up a landing page, even go as far as to like pay for the G Suite. Like,
Yeah, I don't
so
have
my
that
email
either.
is at whatever. In a full-time business capacity, are those costs significant? Maybe not. Gmail's like, what, $7 a month or something. So if it's a full-time business, should we be able to cover $7 a month? Yes. But at the same time, if you're just getting started, even if you are full-time, like, save the money, like, save the overhead costs. I also come from an era of like constantly trying to grow and push and show the level of professionalism which you are because that somehow makes up for any self-conscious feelings. And that can really create an outsized amount of operation costs that you don't otherwise need. At this point, I have like 4 different Google Workspace accounts. So like $7 a month is now actually $28 a month. And I got an email from Google recently that they're increasing their prices. So I'm kind of like, who cares if it says at gmail.com? Maybe it's time for me to change.
Yeah. And I think, there are benefits of having it. I think you get through spam filters easier, but I'm just not as concerned about those things. And then if I'm going to spend some amount of money a month, like I'd rather pay for the community membership where there's actual value versus like a perceived potential value and how like people think about me. I'm also not worried about appearing professional in the pottery space because like I am a professional, like I'm a physician, like I'm not worried about that. So I don't need my own domain to feel like anything about myself.
I'm picturing the Instagram story recently of you like walking across the stage getting an award.
Yeah.
And I'm like, she good. She good.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah.
That's fantastic. The other thought I was thinking about in terms of takeaways for other people who are balancing full-time work and also really passionate about clay is I love how you have been able to connect the two worlds so much, both in what you're making, because one of the other not so much question, but comment that when I told everybody we were interviewing together or recording together rather, that Meg was talking about your resistance frames that you've been making. And a lot of that is connected to your work as a researcher. But then also, as you quickly mentioned it, but just to kind of put a pin in it, you tapped into this network of other physicians that are directly supporting what you're doing in a very pragmatic financial, they're purchasing the bowls that you're making that I think maybe a lot of other people with other full-time work outside of clay might not always think about how they can connect those worlds, right? Because they feel very separate. And it's like, well, this could be your first network of people to be selling to, which actually makes it a lot easier.
Yeah. I think it's the opposite of the, typical adage, like you are not your customer. But for me, like I literally am my customer. My ideal customer is like a, typically woman professional of some sort who has, a full-time income, but usually is taking care of everybody else so they don't treat themselves to nice things. And this is a way you can treat yourself to nice things. And then this year, because, 2025 is very traumatic in many different ways, like on every front, I've just been using my pottery and what I make to essentially help myself cope with like everything that's going on. So first I felt like attacked as an immigrant because of everything that's going on with immigration in the US. And so I, started to make art about immigrants, and it really reframed the fruit flutter bowls, which originally like did not have a farm worker appreciation aspect of it. But I renamed it to be hands to table to really play off of the farm to table. But it's not a farm, it's like people picking the fruits and harvesting the vegetables. And, it's people working in the fields. And those people are often immigrants or migrant workers. So now all of my pottery is stamped with immigrant made, just to kind of remind people of like all the positive things that immigrants bring to the country. And then I also started a series on my Instagram stories every Monday where I feature an immigrant ceramic artist. And that's really been fun to connect with people that I, didn't know. I've asked people for other suggestions, and it really just has been this network of people that are kind of suggesting other people. And so if you are an immigrant ceramic artist in the US, definitely send me a message. I'd love to feature you. Some people have big accounts, some people don't. And so it's just been fun to kind of learn from everyone and feature their work. And then I've also been making a lot of resistance frames that say things like research saves lives, science saves lives, because it helps me to like stamp it out. Like it's a little bit of getting the aggression out, but then at the same time, like writing it in stone, which is what I'm calling the series, like written in stone, to like solidify it as like these are truths, these are facts, they are not things that can be erased. And then like the last time I made a batch, like all of them got bought by researchers because everyone is like feeling it so much that they want something positive to remind them of like all the good that we do because there are so many ways in which it's being attacked and kind of limited and being restricted right now.
I love seeing you take those frames to a conference and having
Yes.
your colleagues like hold them and presumably purchase them, but like just that very direct connection between art and literally what's happening, just in a very literal way. To use literal too many times in one sentence.
Yeah, that was a very last minute idea where I was packing for the conference, an aging research conference, and I packed all of the little frames that I had. And they actually were already sold. So I was like, do not break this. Like, but can you please hold it? And I'm just gonna take a picture. And these are all people who are like aren't on Instagram. They're like, what are you doing, Melissa? I was like, just hear me out. So I went around the conference, collected photos of different people with different frames. If someone was not a federal worker, I would ask them, like, are you okay holding the trans rights or human rights one? Because not everyone is comfortable putting that on the internet right now, not because they don't believe it, but because of other, forces. And so I strung it together, put some nice music on it that felt inspiring. And it's been a really nice way to just like celebrate what we do and feel like we're not alone in this. Even though, like, on a day to day basis, it does feel like your research is getting attacked, like your funding is getting attacked, but it's happening to all of us. And the only way we will survive these 4 years is like together as a community.
That feels like just like such an important major statement that I'm like, Bo, done. There's so many more things that I'd planned to ask, but I kind of just am like, that's it. That's the message. Like, what have we not talked about that you want to make sure people hear from you, that they know about? I don't know, something. This is the big open-ended question that is also sometimes terrible to answer.
Sure. So I am fundraising for different causes this year. So I'm picking a nonprofit every quarter and I am donating as well and then asking people to donate. And then in return, you get something that's either a discount on one of my pieces. So the fruit flutter bowls have been the discounted piece if you donate to, in quarter one, it was Casa Marianella, which is a nonprofit in Austin, Texas that supports displaced immigrants and provides shelter, social services, and education. And I learned about Casa Marianella from attorney Kate Lincoln Goldfinch, who is attorney Kate LG on Instagram. And she has really great content about immigrant rights if you're interested in learning more. And then quarter two was Immigrant Defenders Law Center in Southern California, where I grew up. and they're a social justice law firm that defends immigrant communities. And I chose them because they had a specific program that represents children in immigration court. Because it's wild to think like there is no right to having an attorney in immigration court. I don't know why that is or the history behind that, but it's not like in criminal courts where you have the right to a public defender. So there are children in immigration courts, like representing themselves who may not even speak the language. And that is just absurd to me. And so they represent children, and the government cut a lot of their funding to all of these kinds of programs. And so that's why I was fundraising for them for quarter 2. And then quarter 3 will be Heal Palestine, which is a US-based nonprofit founded in 2024, dedicated to helping children in Palestine rebuild their lives. And it's really focused on health, education, aid, and leadership. And so I will be making special edition watermelon flutter bowls to help support Heal Palestine. And that will be coming out this summer sometime, as soon as I can figure out like where I can luster glaze and fire these things, because I don't have my own kiln.
We didn't even get into transferring from a community studio to a home studio and the kiln conversations we've had in the community. Like, there's a whole nother storyline we could have gone down, but there's also way bigger, more important topics. So people can talk kiln talk with you anytime. They just have to come join us.
Yes.
There, that's my boundary. Things I've learned from Melisa today.
Wonderful. It's been wonderful talking with you, Rebecca. Thank you so much.
Yay. Well, remind us one more time where to find you on the internet.
I am at MWY Pottery on Instagram, and my website is mwypottery.square.site, not .com, because I'm too cheap. But come find me, or come find me in the community, and I'd love to chat more.
Yay. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
I hope this conversation with Melisa has reminded you that you can take your creative practice seriously without it becoming your full-time career. If you've been feeling like you need to choose between your day job and your love of making, it's okay to want both. And if the hustle mentality around side businesses has been stressing you out, it's absolutely okay to embrace Melisa's side saunter approach instead. Doing what you want, when you want, at the pace that you want. Melisa's journey reminds us that there's no timeline for when you're allowed to take yourself seriously as a maker. Her decision to create a system for pre-order sales, submit to galleries, and use her art for meaningful causes came from her own sense of readiness and purpose. And her ability to connect her medical career with her creative practice shows us how much richer our making can become when we stop trying to keep our different worlds separate. In many ways, when we can blend them together, the richer they become, allowing makers like Melisa to create art that fundraises for important causes and brings awareness to her very day job that many of us try to hide from our making practices. As always, if you're looking for help figuring out what version of this making life works for your own specific situation, there are makers from all over the world having these exact conversations inside of the community right now, including Melisa herself. Between traditional online education in the form of recorded masterclasses on subjects like marketing, finances, and SEO, to name just this year's masterclasses so far, as well as the moral support from fellow makers that we all need, who get it on a different level when even our best of friends might not quite understand why we spend our weekends covered in mud. There are heaps of resources and events happening inside of the community, but let's hear about it straight from one of our members.
Hi, I'm Alicia Hagan in New Mexico. I joined the community last year after leaving my teaching career to pursue becoming a full-time artist. The community has been so invaluable in my growth as a solo artist because I still feel like I have coworkers and people I can talk to about my struggles and successes. The quarterly masterclasses always teach me something I didn't know I was even supposed to know. I also absolutely love going to the live co-working sessions and the book club meetups where I can hang out in real time with other makers from all around the world. It is awesome. You can find me and follow my journey on Instagram at Alicia Hagan Art.
If you want to learn more about the perks of membership and support the creation of this podcast in the process, visit makersplaybook.com/community. One more time, since your hands are probably covered in clay or some other art material, it's makersplaybook.com/community. Until next time, my friends, go get back to making your dreams a reality, because together, we've got this. Audio post-production of this podcast is made possible by help from Christy Kotzvan, with promotional material assistance from Queenie Maliki. The Maker's Playbook podcast is recorded on the original homelands of the Potawatomi, Ho-Chunk, and Menominee people, where the people of Wisconsin's sovereign Anishinaabe, Ho-Chunk, Menominee, Oneida, and Mohican nations remain present.
This podcast is a production of the Brickyard Network. To find out more about our lineup of ceramic podcasts, visit brickyardnetwork.org.